Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I read, review and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. Today, I'm here to talk to you about my reading from Q1 of 2024. So we are going to talk about my top 5 books that I've read in 2024 so far. We're going to talk about some superlatives. We are then going to go into the stats of what I've been reading. And finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about the channel and how it's performed. So let's get right into things with my top 5 books. So at number 5, we have Blood Reunion by JCM Byrne. I've talked about this book in a lot of videos now. This is basically superheroes versus vampires in space, or like kind of like sci-fi Superman versus Dracula on Babylon 5. So if any of that sounds fun to you, and if it doesn't, you're a madman or madwoman. No shame. Then you should read these books. So this is book 3 in the Hybrid Helix series. And the Hybrid Helix is kind of a combo of like sci-fi space opera and then kind of blockbuster superhero stuff. So all of the books are super fun. JCM Byrne's very witty and funny with his writing, and the main character Rohan is very funny. And just in general, I think we are getting a really fantastic world, a load of excellent characters, and I'm just really enjoyed this series so far. And if there's anything that you take away from watching my channel, it's that you should read the Hybrid Helix books by JCM Byrne. Next up, what is The Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan, which is the second book in the Empire of the Wolf series. This book was not as good for me as book 1, but by minuscule single digits percent. Do you know what I mean? So in the Empire of the Wolf series, we follow a character called Helena Sadanka, and she is the clerk or assistant to a emperor's justice. And the justice's name is Conrad von Volt, and basically he is like judge, jury, and executioner, basically fantasy Judge Dredd, and he goes around the countryside trying crimes and then doing the executions if need be, or meting out any other kinds of punishment. He has some magical abilities, so he can speak to the dead in certain limited conditions. He's also able to force people to tell him the truth, although using the ability to do that is an extreme strain on the person he uses it on, so they often have like heart attacks or pass out. So he has to be very careful with how he uses that skill. Other justices have other skills, so we meet one that can transport their consciousness into that of an animal, like a bird or fox or something. Lots of really cool magic stuff in this world, and it's kind of like a fantasy story, but also kind of taking on those elements of horror and almost Lovecraftian stuff. And we get a lot more of the horror and Lovecraftian stuff in this one. Slightly less of the justicing. The crime that they are kind of looking into and investigating is really good. I think the antagonist in this series and the kind of antagonist for this book is very good. And the kind of like big conspiracy thing that's happening is very interesting. And we get a big expansion of the world by going from like small towns to the capital of the empire. But the increase in scope, while I enjoyed the increase in scope, I think we lost some of the focus that made Justice of Kings so excellent. And that's why, as I was saying, it was slightly worse, but by minuscule percent. Still a very good book. Next up, we have something that I own physically and I've kept. So a lot of my books, you may see that I'll have books from the library, or I'll buy books and then donate them to the library and stuff like that. But there are some books that I choose to keep for my permanent collection. And the first one of those that we'll be talking about today is Prophet of Adan by Philip Chase. So there's not a huge amount that I can talk about in this book without spoiling kind of like the setup for this book pretty quite effectively spoils the original, and I think that everyone should just read the Adan trilogy. So the Adan trilogy, I haven't read the third one yet. I am going to, I promise. So Prophet of Adan, definitely not middle book syndrome. This is better than the first book. And the setup for this one's really interesting. We get to see more of the magic and the magic system and how it works. We get to explore more parts of the world. We get to meet some new and exciting characters, and we get some more POV chapters from characters we've already seen before. Overall, absolutely love this book and was genuinely really surprised by the ending. So the Adan trilogy is what I would say is like a really good combination of the classic fantasy style of story and modern fantasy prose and storytelling. So I found this very accessible, very fun and easy to read. And on top of that, it was a kind of story that I felt like I have not really seen all that much, because I don't read a lot of classic fantasy, honestly. I'm not a huge fan of it. So getting to read this, which had that kind of classic fantasy vibes in the style of prose that I like to prefer to read, made it a real winner for me. That's why I ended up coming third in my top 5 for 2024 so far. Next up, and the next 2 books I both read in March, and if you've watched my March recap, you'll probably pretty quickly be able to guess what those are. So we have Promise of Blood by Brian McClellan. This is the first book in the Powder Mage series. So this book basically follows the aftermath of a bloody military coup in a fantasy world. It's kind of set at, like, I think it's called like Flintlock fantasy. So we have like the technology level is kind of close to like the Napoleon War, the French Revolution. People are still fighting with swords, but we also have muskets and pistols. We have 3 different magic systems in this book. All 3 of them are excellent and really fun. We have the privileged, who are kind of close to like your traditional magic users. We have the powder mages, who basically snort gunpowder like cocaine to do magic with bullets, which is cool as hell. I don't know how Brian McClellan came up with this, but it's super cool. And then we have my favorite type of the magic guys, which are the Nact. And Nact are basically regular humans who have like one super skill. So one of the Nact that we meet in the book, we meet one that doesn't need to sleep. We meet one that has a perfect memory, and we meet one that can pick any lock. So the possibilities are really endless, and I really, really liked this book. The characters, we have like 3 main POVs. We have Tamas, who's on the front, who is the leader of the coup. We have his son, Taniel Two-Shot, who is called such because he puts 2 bullets in his rifle, and then he uses his powder mage abilities to make them go in different directions, which is super cool. He's basically bending bullets like Wanted. And then we have Adamat, who is the Nact who has the perfect memory, and he is an old police detective, and he's basically working as a private eye for Tamas, investigating this whole big conspiracy with the mages. So super enjoyed this book. I was recommended it by my friend Mare from Andrew Watson's Discord, and I'm now going to be listening to all of her recommendations because she told me I would love this, and I loved it. So guess it's time to read all the books that she's been recommending me for months. Next up, we have my number 1 book of Q1, The Dragon Reborn. I have talked about this so many times in so many different videos that I will not bore you guys too much with it. This is the 3rd book in Robert Jordan's seminal Wheel of Time series. I actually haven't started the 4th one yet. Normally I would have by this point in the month, but I have not had much reading time so far in April. But I will be starting it probably tomorrow. Really looking forward to reading some more Wheel of Time. Absolutely love this universe, love these characters. Finally like Matt now, after reading 3 books where I found him absolutely insufferable in 2 of them. This book has a fun gimmick which makes it super different to a lot of fantasy that I've read, especially kind of big, long, multi-POV fantasy. Very few books I've read have tried the specific thing that they do here. I don't want to spoil it though, because I really do think people should read it. Love this book. I've done review for this. I've done a spoiler-filled discussion for this. So if you want to hear more of my thoughts on The Dragon Reborn, you can find it in those videos. What was my biggest surprise of Q1? So these are the two superlatives that I'm going to be doing, which was my biggest surprise and my biggest disappointment. So my biggest surprise, and I forgot to grab the physical book, but I actually have 2 copies of this book. So my biggest surprise was The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. So I had been told that the beginning of the Wheel of Time, the first couple of books were kind of naff. That the writing style was overly flowery, and people talked about it as if it was like people call a section of the Wheel of Time the slog, but people talked about this book as if it was its own kind of slog. And I loved The Eye of the World. I thought that all the characters were really interesting. I thought there's so much excellent world building and all these hints at stuff that could be happening. I absolutely loved The Eye of the World. You can watch my review for it and mine and Matt's spoiler-filled discussion for it on the channel. Yeah, had a great time reading this one. And as I've said before in many videos, if you are like I was and you thought that The Wheel of Time would be too stuffy or boring or would have too like flowery prose for you, I'm here to tell you that it is a really accessible read, and while the books are long, they are really easy breezy reads, and I would genuinely recommend this series. My biggest disappointment. Now, I don't often find books disappointing because I'm tending to read books that are heavily recommended on BookTube by people who I know their taste matches mine. But in this case, I was reading a book as everyone else was reading it because I read it when it came out, and that was Trials of Empire by Richard Swan. This book was still good. Nothing this year that I have read has been bad, but the first 2 books in the series were 5 stars, and this one ended up being a 3-star. So you can kind of see where my expectations did not meet what I ended up reading, and that honestly is the definition of a disappointment. And I was expecting this to be, creme de la creme. I was expecting this to be at the top of this list, if not, number 2, 1 or 2. And it ended up being, as I said, the most disappointing book I read this year. It is still good. I would still say read The Empire of the Wolf, especially because the first 2 books are 5 out of 5 for me. But this one just didn't really hit for me, and I was a little bit sad about it, to be honest. Let's talk about my reading stats. So I think my average rating was a 4 out of 5, which makes sense because, like I said before, I read a lot of good books because I mostly read it. I haven't read any of the classics, really. So, like, everything I'm reading is heavily, heavily recommended, like Wheel of Time or, Powder Mage, etc. But I have read 18 total books. So that is 18 total, 15 novels, 2 novellas, both of which were Sun Eater, 1 short story collection, which also was Sun Eater by Christopher Rocchio. I've read 10 sci-fi books. That does include, as I was saying before, 2 novellas and a short story collection. So that's why I've read a lot more sci-fi now than fantasy. So as I talked about at the beginning of the year, my goal was to read at least 1 sci-fi book a month. And because I've been reading the Hybrid Helix and the Sun Eater series and Red Rising, I've actually ended up reading more sci-fi than fantasy in 2024, which I think will change. But so far, yeah, more sci-fi than fantasy. Technically less if you think that I read 8 full novels and 7 full novels of sci-fi. So 8 fantasy, 7 sci-fi. But the 2 novellas and short story collection kind of top it up. 4 of the books that I read were self-published. And so my goal was also to read 1 self-published book a month. And I have done that. I am on target for reading, I think my target was 60 books, and I am on target for that for this year. because to do that, I think I needed to read 15 books in the first 3 months, and I have done that. So yeah, I don't see any issue currently with reaching that 15 target, reaching that 60 book target. But yeah, that's my reading's been going really well this year, to be honest. I've had one and a bit disappointing books, in that Morning Star was not as good as Golden Sun and Red Rising, but it was still good. And, you know, Tyranny of Faith was also still good. But I am trying a lot more new stuff this year, so I've got loads of new series to try. I want to be kind of I'm adding in a new kind of informal goal that I want to be starting more book ones. I think that that'll be good for the channel because people love a book one review, but also I feel like my experience of fantasy, if I continue to do what I have been doing, which is basically start a series, read all the books in consecutive months, I'm not broadening my horizons as much as I would want to. So from now on, I'm going to be trying to read like book one a month, and then bring in some sequel books as and when I have space. So yeah, at the moment I'm scheduling for my TBR 4 books and then having some bonuses. So for example, this month I have The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. I have Partial Function by JCM Byrne. I have The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan. And then I have Demon in White by Christopher Rocchio. I didn't actually realise that Partial Function is kind of more fantasy than sci-fi. So I've ended up booking a fantasy book straight in after my previous fantasy read. But c'est la vie. We'll get to that when we get to it. Let's talk stats. So, in the first quarter of 2024, I have gained 235 subs. So it's basically just under half of my subs I gained in Q1 of 2024, which is pretty cool because I started in August last year. So that's meant that I gained as many subs basically in 3 months as I did in like almost 5. My most viewed video of 2024 is my Kindle Scribe review. Kindle reviews always do really, really well on BookTube. I will one day review my 2022 Kindle Basic, which is kind of almost my favorite Kindle. I do use it a lot, and I really love it. I take it everywhere with me basically. But yeah, I don't want to review it yet. I kind of want to wait for a good slot for the channel. So probably a month or so at least before I go to review that one. Maybe it'll come up in the summer. But anyway, yeah, the Kindle Scribe review was my #1 viewed video. So thank you if you found the channel through that video, let me know. I'd love to know. Drop in the comments how you found my channel, and unless you're an author or fellow booktuber and I just tagged you in the video to make you watch it. Apologies if I did that to you. My least viewed video, and this is actually a sad one for me, is my #5 book of 2024. So it is Blood Reunion by JCM Byrne, that review. And we've talked already a lot about this book in this video. I loved Blood Reunion. It's a really good book that I think that everybody should read. I love the Hybrid Helix series. If you like cool, fun sci-fi blockbusters, then this is the one for you. Like, it's worth a read. Let me know if you've read Hybrid Helix because I've recommended it. I'd love to find that out. But that's everything for today. I don't know whether that's felt super rushed. It's felt a bit quick and rushed to me. Maybe in Q2 I'll take some more time and sit down for longer with you guys. But I've really enjoyed making content for you this year. I've really enjoyed all the reading that I have done. I've especially enjoyed talking with the community. Graf and Marie comment on all my videos, and I love chatting with you about books. And I've loved doing my collaboration videos with Ross and Laura and Matt. And I'm hoping to do more this year. I'd like to do more interviews like I did with Andrew Watson and Ezra Payne. There's loads of stuff I want to do. I've had some fantastic ideas that currently I don't think I can actually capitalize on due to just kind of the setup of my house. But you never know. So yeah, let me know what sort of content you want to see from me. Let me know any book series that you would recommend. I'm open for trying stuff. There are a few series that I'm like, actually, I'm kind of sure I won't like that. Like a lot of more classic stuff. I'm like, don't think I'll like that. But I'm pretty open-minded. So yeah, drop some recommendations. Let me know in the comments, as I said, how you found the channel. And also, if you have anything you'd like to see me discuss in future. I also have been planning for a while to do some more comic book reviews. I know that they do not do well on YouTube, but I love comic books and I want to talk about them. So if you've got any comics that you'd like me to review, you know, like graphic novels, short trade paperback sort of thing, then put those in the comments as well. And as always, please subscribe because I'll love you forever. And thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.